Are you curious about bodies, pleasure, and possibilities? And what about curious about what others are up to on the planet when it comes to pleasure, sex, and play? Have you considered what pleasure can do for your life, your body, and your bank account? Do you know something magical, delightful, and out of this world orgasmic is not only possible for you, but totally available to you? If you're ready to be the magical, sexual, sexy beast you know you can be, and you just need the tools to get there, you're in the right place. Now, here's the host of The Pleasure Zone, sensual movement artist, relationship and sex alchemist, Milica Jelenic.
Well, hello, my sweet, sweet pleasure seekers. That's you guys. Just before the show, I was actually thinking, like, are we even pleasure seekers anymore? Or are we like pleasure warriors? Because in a time like this, we're like fighting for pleasure, people. I think we're like fighting for our lives to fight for pleasure. Like, do we even think half the time that we're like, I don't even know if I deserve pleasure. I'm just trying to survive this pandemic. So that's my curious thought today is like, are we pleasure seekers? Are we still seeking? Do we have it? Are we now fighting to keep it? I think some pleasures we're definitely fighting to keep, like free speech. That's a big one. I won't get too political on this show because when I do, it gets ugly and nasty. But if you do want to hear political rants by me, feel free to friend me on Facebook or Instagram, where I may get kicked off for sharing my insights with you, just for fun. But I don't usually go political, so I'm just going to go pleasure right now. And I'm going to go like, how do we have pleasure? Like, how dare we? I watch a lot of, not a lot, but there are some things that when I watch them, I become like obsessed. Like I'm one of those like people who watches a show on Netflix and I watch everything. So Outlander season next, whatever season it is, came out the other day, and I'm on like episode 4 or 5 or 6, or I don't know, because every night after my daughter goes to bed, I'm like season 5, and I'm like addicted, so I'm watching it. And I'm looking at this going, wow, there's, we look at history and we're looking at like, what have people been fighting for forever? Friggin' freedoms, man. And one of our freedoms that I think we're so lucky to have is the freedom to have pleasure. And that comes across in different things. It even comes across in constitutions around the world, for health related stuff and for freedom of speech. I think that's a fabulous pleasure to have. So different so-called rights, rights that were given by corporations, blah, blah, blah. Won't get into the logistics of it, but for going with natural law, we're actually born with, according to natural law, our God-given right is to have pleasure, to have health, to be looked after. A little bit of natural law would be nice right now. So let's invite that in. And if you don't know what that is, please feel free to go check it out. There's great information in the universe and through different sources to check out what is natural law. However, I just know what I know briefly to give you is to say, you were born with these, they've been taken away, and let's bring back pleasure. So that's how I feel. And how dare we have these things during a pandemic when we're all supposed to be fucking suffering. We're all supposed to be suffering, terribly. And everything is supposed to be suffering. Our businesses, our homes, our health, our friends, our family, the world is suffering. How dare we have anything remotely pleasurable? We should be having our hearts pouring out to help people just to survive, should we not? Well, it's that old adage of, if somebody is drowning, and do you jump in with them and drown with them, or do you throw them a dinghy? Do you throw them, dinghy is not the right word, you throw them like a lifesaver? Do you throw them something that you can throw into the water, they can hold on, and you can haul back? So can we haul people back instead of jumping into the pile, the quagmire of mess that's going on? And if we can, then we got to be in our pleasure zone to be able to invite other people into their pleasure zone. Because if we're in that quagmire of no pleasure, there is no way we can be inviting people into pleasure. We just can't. We're in a quagmire of poo. And if you invite people into a quagmire of poo, they're just going to be in poo with you. So, for you pleasure seekers, pleasure warriors, people that know that pleasure is possible and what pleasure can do, pleasure can heal your body, pleasure can heal your bank account. Pleasure can do freaking miracles in the world. So, pleasure is also one of these energies that has us say, regardless of what everything else is, my body, I can choose what my body experiences, and I'm choosing to have an experience that I call pleasure. So, putting the dare out to the world here, whoever is watching and listening, I'm putting the dare out to you. Dare you, dare you to go and not only be the pleasure seekers you truly be the pleasure warriors, be the ones inviting other people to pleasure, be the pleasure leaders. We all chose a little bit more of that, and we were throwing that out to the world so that they could choose that. What would that be like? So it'd be less fear mongering. There'd be a lot of less, things going on that are hiding information. There'd be a lot less hiding. There's pleasure. To have pleasure, you got to be vulnerable. Things going to have to show up. We're going to have some vulnerability for that pleasure to show up. It's all fascinating to me. It's also freaking intermingled and intertwined. And so many people lose, you lose certain things, or you buy into the idea that you've lost certain freedoms. Freedom of movement right now, we have a loss of that going on for sure in Ontario. In Canada, we are experiencing what's called a stay at home policy. So we're being asked to stay at home for pretty much, unless we have to leave home, we're being asked to stay at home. Which will likely become more reinforced like it has in other countries to more, there'll be things in place to ensure that that happens. So here we are, we're stay at home right now. So we have a lack of freedom of movement, and we have lack of freedom of speech, and we have lack of freedom of, I say that because I've had some things pulled off of Facebook, because not even a chance to edit them, just having them ripped off because that word masturbation's naughty. It's naughty and awful. So Lord knows when they go through my whole list of things I've posted over the years for different offerings and different radio shows that I've put out there, I'm going to have some real spankings going on. And well, the thing is, they don't know I like a good spanking. That just makes me work harder. So thank you, FB, for the little hand slap, little butt spank, because that just made me think even more about how many more ways you can spank me and beat me, because it's funny. So yeah, I'm all good with that. So yeah, I'm not even at the level of where I get to be pulled off of Facebook yet, but man, wouldn't that be fun if I could be such a rebel? Because some people I truly admire are getting pulled off of all social media, and I think they're freaking awesome. So that's cool to me. And I think that, the more that we can have that freedom of speech, saying the word masturbation, because it's so naughty, having that freedom of speech taken away is insane. It's just like, what twilight zone are we in? And what else are you going to take away from us? So I'm not even American. Like, this is so funny to me that having American rules that are being taken away from American citizens, imposed on me, but they're being imposed on the world. The whole thing is cray-cray. So that's a fun thing. But the beautiful thing about having radio is, yes, you can tend to get, you can get censored on radio. However, they'd have to listen to me. And bless them if they're going to willing to sit around and listen. Their little algorithms going through my little sound waves. Then bless them for sitting around listening to my episodes. So thank you, censorship. If you are censoring, thank you for listening, because that means you are listening. Cool. And I'll say things like masturbation randomly. And that's one way you can have pleasure during a pandemic. Let's be frank. Here we are all stuck at home. Bring on the masturbation, my friends, and the 500 ways you've never thought of having it. What are the many different ways that you've considered masturbation that you haven't had it yet? And some of you are like, damn it, I'm stuck at home with my family and my children, and I can't get out, and I have no time to myself, and I'm surrounded and drowning in their energy and their stuff, and I can't even escape to go masturbate. So, friends, there's always the place. Does your family shower with you? I'm just curious because if your kids and your wife are in the shower with you, well, that's a whole other relationship I'm curious about. Write to me if that's the case, because it's a curiosity that the entire family showers together. And I have heard of people that do this. So, not judging, just a curiosity. How's it working for you? How's it working for your kids? I mean, I showered with my daughter probably till she was 1 or 2 out of ease. She's 12 now. We don't shower together, but I do know people who did that with their kids. So I don't know, whatever. And that's what I know is kind of interesting. But if you can get in the shower alone, you've got things you can do. Let's face it, the shower itself is an amazing tool for masturbation. I think one of my favorite, very, very favorite tools for masturbation, as I mean, it wasn't one of my first tools. My favorite's my hands, but my second favorite is water by far. And water coming from a faucet, water coming from a shower head. Peeps, if you've never tried it, this is where you want to start. And if you have tried that, add a little more fun. You can, get underwater vibrators. And yes, boys and girls, gender neutral, whatever genitals you have, you can use underwater vibrators on your body. They're delightful. And the ones that are from Pure Romance, which I'm connected to, are also rechargeable. Isn't that beautiful? You're not even don't even have to worry about going out to get batteries during pandemic, because I've heard people go, well, I'm not going to bother with a vibrator because then who has time to go to the store? How do I go to the store and just pick up batteries and blah 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 blah? Rechargeable, people, rechargeable is the way to go. Underwater rechargeable, and then you're on to something, because that's way fun. So underwater rechargeable vibrators of all kinds. They got cock rings, they got you name it. If you don't even know what I'm talking about and you need a little visual to see what these things look like, let me know. You can connect with me and I'll walk you through. I can show you some of the things that Pure Romance has, the company that I'm connected with. So I can show you these things, explain them to you, and then you can choose something that works for you. Plug it in, recharge it, because isn't that fun? So here we are, we're alone, daring in our most desperate times to have pleasure. What's wrong with us? We must be insane. We should be suffering. We should not only be suffering, we should be hiding ourselves, hiding our bodies, hiding our desires, because hey, we've got family here and now we're all stuck together. And just don't admit that you have a body that wants pleasure. Although I've had some of the most fascinating conversations with tweens lately about the desire for more information about sex and bodies. So I may be talking about that a little bit coming soon, because if kids are admitting that they're actually curious about sex and pleasure, the chances are adults are, and they're just not talking about it because they're just too chicken. So I have a question here, which is, I can't see the question, so I'll have to do that after break, but that's all good. It says something about having pleasure, but I just can't see it. And that's life. So that's how it rocks and rolls in my universe, kids. So pleasure. And I really wonder how many of us have just given up. Are you just like, yeah, whatever, it's a pandemic, I surrender my thoughts, my livelihood, my questioning, I surrender my everything because I'm just willing to be told what to do right now. And generally, when you're just being willing to be told what to do, you've kind of aborted all your creativity, and you've kind of aborted everything that has to do with your creative desires, as well as your energy for pleasure. When you're willing to think for yourself, get creative, ask some questions, your pleasure will start to increase because your curiosity increases. And as your curiosity increases, then all of a sudden you start to think of things that may actually have your body enticed and delighted. But if surrender does turn you on, then this might be working for you. If you're super turned on by like surrendering to um, anything that's what you might say is like a bigger power, then yeah, isn't just like surrendering and being told what to do. This may be actually the greatest pleasure of all times for you. You're like, I am so turned on by having the government tell me what to do. You just sit at home masturbating to the thought of being told what to do. You're like, oh, thank God for masks. That turns me on. Or thank God for being told I have to stay home. That turns me on. Or thank God I'm being told I have to shut down my business. That turns me on. Frick, if that turns you on, congratulations, because that's awesome. I mean, I'm all for consensual anything that turns you on. And if that turns you on, high fives to you. Just keep going with that. So, again, there's no judgment on how you're getting the pleasure. And if that's one way you're getting it, congratulations. So, we are going to talk though more about daring. Dare you? How dare you have pleasure during a pandemic? What's wrong with us? We're just weirdos. So, you are listening to the Pleasure Zone here on Inspired Choices Network. We'll be right back after this commercial.
Are you secretly a voyeur, wondering what's going on in other people's sex lives? What if now is the time for a totally different sexual evolution? Are you interested in people who are pioneers of different sexual and pleasurable practices? Lean in now with Milica Jelenic, where she will entice you and your body to know your own pleasure zone. On the Pleasure Zone radio show with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic, you'll receive tools, inspiration, and a foundation to allow yourself to receive more in your sex life, and quite possibly other areas of your life as well. Listen for the Pleasure Zone with Milica every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific Time on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
Are you a subject matter expert? Are you here to share your expertise with an audience waiting to hear from you in only the way you can deliver? Are you ready to have your voice amplified across the airwaves? Inspired Choices Network has a global radio platform streaming to millions of people across the world. Professionally produced and supported by an accomplished team every step of the way, you can broadcast from anywhere in the world, knowing your voice matters, and we ensure it is delivered with ease and efficiency. Eager to hear your message, the world awaits. Contact us today to become an Inspired Choices Network radio host. Email become a host at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com.
This is the Pleasure Zone with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic. To participate in the program today, join our live studio audience in our chat room at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com. You can also make the choice to ask or comment by email. info@milicajelenic.com. Now, back to the program.
Hi, beautifuls. We're back. There was a question that I couldn't see, and now I can see it. What does having pleasure contribute during a pandemic? What does having pleasure to us? What does having pleasure contribute to us during the pandemic? What does having self-pleasure? Oh, what does it? Oh, self-pleasure. Magnificent. What a great question. So, self-pleasure, what does it do? Well, brothers and sisters and everything else that I don't have the terms for right now, I'm including everybody of all gender identities. I say that self-pleasure, there are some key things that we know that it does. Key things are that we know that masturbation and orgasms, masturbation to orgasm can increase dopamine, that feel good hormone. So that's one thing. We also know that it can relax bodies. Yes, you kind of get excited during and then your body relaxes. It's a great way to let some endorphins out. It's a great way for your body to be able to get stress out. If you're stressed, go diddle yourself. Go do it. Go, my friends, play with yourself it's like you're never going to play with yourself again. Because guess what's a pandemic? You might die tomorrow. You might as well masturbate. Let's face it. I was actually watching, so I was saying earlier, I was watching Outlander and it kind of like totally inspired me. So I was watching one episode and they're like heading off, they're gathering an army and they're going to go off to war. Yes, spoiler alert, whatever, it's 1700s in in America. Guess what? That happened. So this is what's going on in the show. And during it, I said to my husband, I'm like, oh man, if I was going off to war, the first thing I would do is, if I didn't have a lover, I'd go masturbate it out real good. I'd want to die knowing that I got off before I died. And he's like, oh, I'm like, seriously, like, wouldn't you be sure that you had your daily dose? Like, if you're like, I made another day, I survived that day of war, I'm going to go masturbate until I feel freaking good about things. And then I'm going to go off to war again. I know that I would have had the tent. I would have probably had the bukkake tent. I would have been like the woman who's like, okay, boys, come in here, get it going, get off. We're going to have fun. This is going to be good. I would have volunteered to be in the army for that. I'm here for you, boys and girls. Well, at the time, there weren't a lot of girls happening there. So I'm here for you, boys. Here for you, boys. I'm just going to like be here while you guys masturbate. It's going to be awesome. I think it's powerful. And it also is, why wouldn't you just do that before you go to war? I don't know. I'm thinking I would. So that's been my motivation. I'm like, hey, Mike, we could die tomorrow. It's a pandemic. Let's get off. And he's like, oh, you and your pandemic ideas. So yes, the pandemic is very motivating to have more and more pleasure and find new ways to have it and find more creative ways to not wake the children or the wild animals or the neighbors, even though our neighbors are like a kilometer away or more. You just don't want to wake the neighbors. You can get that loud sometimes out here. Things echo. This is what I'm saying. So you just want to get creative. And I don't know, just think about it. If you could die tomorrow, what would you be choosing? I'd be choosing pleasure. And I just spit when I said that because that's how excited I got and everything just got like out of my face. So if you're in survival mode, I'm thinking, if you're in survival mode, what are you feeling? Are you feeling like, hey, I'm going to do something that's going to have me feel good? I know during the war in the former Yugoslavia, my cousins were there. They were kids. And when I went to visit in 2000, I remember asking them and asking people in the village, like, what was it like? And they said they had a great time. That sounds messed up. But every night for them, they didn't know if they were going to die. And my family hosted parties every night. Go figure. My family had connections to North America. So our end of the family could send money to their end of the family, which actually provided for the village. And so they could have food and people would go over to their houses and everybody would share food and they'd have music. There was musicians in the village. They would party like they were going to die. And, you know, a lot of people would say that that's just what goes on. And, you know, I know people who've been in war zones and they say you've never had so much fun in your life as when you're in a war zone because people don't give a shit. They know that they could die tomorrow. They're going to have the most fun possible. So my question is, do we not know that experience in this country or maybe in some of the countries experiencing pandemics? I think Italy knows because they were having parties and making music. The beginning of this COVID lockdown, they were making music on their balconies and people all over their towns were making music and singing to each other across the laneways and stuff. Why? Because they understand life. Somehow here we don't really understand life or we don't understand the preciousness of life. So we're not really aiming to have those parties and celebrate. And yes, we're not allowed to have the parties because we're in closure. But hell, we've got Zoom parties. We can do things on levels that people don't even know. We can psychically connect. We can energetically connect. We can connect on Zoom. We can connect in different ways that nobody can stop us from having pleasure except for us. No corporation, aka Canada and the US, etc. No corporations of government, no corporations of businesses, no corporations at all. Nobody can actually stop you from having pleasure except you. Yes, you could be imprisoned, But you think of people like Nelson Mandela who were imprisoned and they still found something that kept them going, some smidgen of pleasure that had them keep choosing to stay alive. So I'm curious, what's stopping you? What kind of, as a friend of mine, Jennifer Kramer Lewis, has a show on this station called Big Fat Lies. What lies are you buying that you can't have pleasure? So yeah, she's got a brilliant show. Check her out too, because she's all over the place talking about lies, and there are shite loads of them out there that we buy as if they're like the best candy in town. Like, that's some good candy. I'm going to buy that lie. I'm going to have some more of that. Not only am I going to eat it, I'm going to eat more and more of it, and I'm going to gorge on it because I love it, because it makes me feel comfy. So I know that it's very daring to have pleasure. I know too that even now it's daring to talk about things that surprises me, but it's daring to talk about things like masturbation, which we just talked about for the last 15 minutes. And it's daring to look at new ways to do it so that you can do it, even if you're in a home filled with people. And I also know that there are ways we can connect with people and bodies that can give us pleasure, and pleasure isn't always sex. So what kind of foods? And I'm not telling you to go out and gain 500 pounds, but I'm asking you to find foods that really invite your body into like feeling alive and awake. Now, for everybody, that's different. And for some people would say, go eat some really alive food. Well, the truth of the matter is most of our food has very low life vitality quality to it. And if you don't understand what that means, that's okay. It's like if you were to look at, say, a tomato now and a tomato 100 years ago, they have very different qualities, and the energy around them is very different. They have like a different life about them, right? So food is very different than it was 100 years ago, for sure. How do I know that? I'm not just psychic, but I'm an effing genius, but it's true. And the quality is very different. Also, the preparation is different, and what we've done to the seeds is different. And that's a whole other show. I could talk about GMO forever, but I won't. And I invite you to find, because everything's so corrupted, I invite you to find food that your body resonates with. And then when you find it, hold that food and ask that food if it will give your body pleasure. And your body will know. Bodies have like this amazing knowledge. And for those of you who know how to do kinesiology or muscle testing, then you can muscle test to see if it'll give you pleasure. And if you don't know how, let me know. I can be happy to connect with you and give you a little 5-minute walkthrough on how to do that. But that means you're going to have to connect with me and explain why you're connecting with me, not just, oh, I like your face. And I'm like, thank you. I'm not sure what you're asking for, because I get some of those sometimes. I'm like, I like you. You want to marry me? That doesn't tell me anything. But if you want to know how to do muscle testing for food, you can ask me, can you show me how to do this? Maybe one day I'll actually take the time to make a video. Although a lot of people have videos out there about this. This is not news, so you can always look that up. And check it. Check it. What food gives you pleasure? And then enjoy it. Enjoy a feast. Make a feast for yourself. So put out this food that's beautiful for your body, and put it out and display it in a way that's beautiful. So your senses are being aroused. Your eyes are being aroused by the look. Your smell, your nose is, your olfactory system is being aroused by the smells. Even sometimes cooking, and you can hear like, I like the sound of things sizzling, right? So, if I have veggies in my oven, they're roasting and they're sizzling, it's like such a satisfying sound. So if that brings you pleasure too, listen to the food that you're eating so that you can even receive some pleasure from that. Smell, taste, and like taste it fully. So smell your food, enjoy the smell of it until you're like, wow, that smells amazing. And the smell might even change. And then you go to lick it and it tastes different, and you go to eat it and it tastes different. And I have a brilliant friend who had a show on here called Right Body for You for years, and I'm sure some of those tips and tools are on her show. Her name's Danielle Carter. She also does classes on body awareness, so you can check her out as well, Danielle Carter. and her Right Body for You show on the Inspired Choices Network. I'm sure she has stuff in her archives about food. And she's a brilliant facilitator on how to like have so much pleasure with your food. So that's one way you can do it, is use all of your senses with your food. And again, it doesn't mean you have to eat all of it. Your senses might feel fulfilled and your body might be fulfilled just by looking at it, hearing it, smelling it, tasting it, touching it. And then you don't find yourself maybe eating 5 tons of food that you normally wouldn't eat. It's interesting to me to hear people going on about how much weight they gained during COVID and how miserable they feel and their body feels, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, because you're not being with things, you're not being with people, you're not being with food. You're creating separation like a big fat lie that doesn't even exist. Separation is shit. And when you can actually get the energy of being connected to what you're eating, connected to who you're having sex with, connected to the people that you enjoy their company, when you get that you are connected to them and your body has a sense of fulfillment, the loneliness goes, the sadness goes, all these things that we, that we think we're lacking, they start to go because we're reconnecting. And having like a connection to food is fascinating. I spent 2 weeks ago, I spent some time eating a little differently just for fun, for the experience, to see how like addicted I was to things like I guess dairy and bread or something. I don't, it is lectins, actually, to name it. If people don't know what lectins are, that's a whole other show, but it has nothing to do with sex. So, but it could actually, because it's part of what affects your gut lining and that could affect your sex. But that's unless you want to hear about that. If you want to hear about that, I'll tell you guys about it. I just don't feel like this is the audience for it. So you can do things experimentally with your body to see what will give it pleasure. And sometimes switching up your food just to see what actually gives you pleasure. You might have a week where all you're eating is really succulent ganache. I don't know. Don't judge it. Just try it and see what happens and see how your body responds and see how happy your body is. It's when you start judging it that the stuff just goes downhill right into the pooper. So we're going to head to our next commercial break. You're listening to The Pleasure Zone here on Inspired Choices Network, and we'll be right back after this commercial.
Are you secretly a voyeur, wondering what's going on in other people's sex lives? What if now is the time for a totally different sexual evolution? Are you interested in people who are pioneers of different sexual and pleasurable practices? Lean in now with Milica Jelenic, where she will entice you and your body to know your own pleasure zone. On the Pleasure Zone radio show with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic, you'll receive tools, inspiration, and a foundation to allow yourself to receive more in your sex life, and quite possibly other areas of your life as well. Listen for the Pleasure Zone with Milica every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific Time on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
Interested in masturbating for money, copulating for consciousness, and pleasuring on purpose? 21 Days of Sexual Magicism with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic is an exploration of tools, processes, and actions that you can use to create more for your life, your body, your money inflows, and so much more. Graduated learning for all levels of interest. Learn at your own pace via video classes or join the yearly live class. Take a peek at www.milicajelenic.com.
This is the Pleasure Zone with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic. To participate in the program today, join our live studio audience in our chat room at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. You can also make the choice to ask or comment by email, info@milicajelenic.com. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back, my sweet, sweet pleasure seekers. Tonight we're talking about daring to have pleasure during a pandemic. What? Who's that crazy? Well, my friend, dear friend, she's also the producer tonight and the CEO of Inspired Choices Network. Give me a little remind. She said, do you know that during times of war that things that are pleasure related, like the things that are pleasure related, like makeup and nylons and illegal alcohol, all survive the economy. Well, yes. And at the time, there wasn't a lot of sex toys going on. So, like we saw the spike in sales in sex toys during the first closures of COVID, definitely people are looking for pleasure. Now, as much as we're looking for pleasure, are we choosing it, right? So, I was saying at the beginning of the show, we can be pleasure seekers. Are we willing to be pleasure warriors? Would you actually fight somebody to ensure that you would have pleasure now and in the future? Not a lot of you, not a lot of you, and that's okay. But I got to tell you, I'm willing to fight people for my pleasure. Willing to take them down. I'm willing to take them down. And if you want to be in my army of taking down the things for pleasure, just private message me. We'll take down the world for pleasure. That's what we're going to do. So I think it's a right. It's a God-given right. It's part of natural law that we are absolutely divinely given the right to things like pleasure, to things like safety, to things like health and food and shelter. These are like divine rights that we're given and that are taken away from us by corporations. Yeah, I'm not going to get too political, but I really want to. So, the one thing that we can choose to get through insanity and a big effing mess is pleasure. Pleasure regardless. How do we create pleasure with our bodies, our souls, our beings? How do we do that in a way that will invite others to it? How do we do this in a way that's an expansive energy that will invite people to start to actually have like bust the paradigm? I wonder how many people it would take to choose really to truly choose to say, screw all of this, I'm choosing pleasure regardless, to bust this paradigm. And what I do know is there are already people doing that. They're not using those words, they're using their own words. They're using words like freedom and sovereignty, but with sovereignty comes pleasure, with freedom comes pleasure. There is some pleasure in the whole idea of BDSM because that's consensual non-consent. But what we have right now is non-consent. If somebody were to hold me down right now and tell me that I can't leave my house and they've confined me there, that's non-consent. That's like a violation of my rights. That's a violation of natural law and my personal freedoms. So there you go. It's a violation and not cool with that. I'm just not. So I want to know, I'm being dared by a co-host to actually say what I want to say politically. I don't know. I don't want us to get pulled from anything, so I'm not going to. But or I don't want all my shows of 307 shows to be pulled from me actually saying what I think right now. Maybe one day I won't give a crap. Right now I still do. So, though, what I do know is that we've essentially allowed ourselves to experience a non-consent. So I'm going to take this whole scenario called pandemic, and I'm going to relate it to you in a sex talk. So right now, what you're experiencing is non-consensual BDSM. You are being gagged. You are being basically held down, and you are being told what to do and how to do it against your will. And soon you are going to be told that you need to shove something in your body that you don't want in there, or maybe you do want in there because you don't know. And guess what? That's not consent. If you do consent to it, that's fine. If you're like, yes, I like this, then you are doing consensual consent. What I'm experiencing is non-consent. This is like a violation, and I'm not cool with it. And it's a violation of personal rights. It's a violation of natural law. It's an effing violation. That's all. Simple. And yeah, I'm pretty passionate about this. As we can say passion, I'll say passion because it is a suffering. And I'm suffering not only with myself, but I'm suffering with others. So in that sense, it's passionate. And it's also a drive right now because I have I'm watching a lot of people I know suffer emotionally, like depression and a whole bunch of things, because things are occurring against their rights. They know it intuitively, they know it instinctively that something is violating them, and they just don't know what or why or how to stop it. How many people who are being raped in the middle of it know actually how to stop it? It's not that common. You're just in the middle of it and you are so in a freaking beyond that you don't know how to stop the violation from happening. This is what's going on. So this is how I see the pandemic in a sexual way. There we go. It's non-consent. And to make it consensual non-consent, we'd all have to be like, yes, tie me down, hold me back. And cool, there are like some of you who are totally into that, and I'm totally cool if you totally consent to it and it turns you on. Yes. If you're consenting to it and it doesn't turn you on, why are you consenting to it? So if you consent to anything and it's not turning you on, why are you choosing it? What's the benefit of choosing it? Yeah, there's a thought, right? Okay. I'm gonna like chill out myself a little bit and expand a little bit, so y'all don't have to like y'all, because I'm gonna go to Texas where there's lots of, energetically in Texas where there's lots of sovereign people. So so here's a question. If we are having pleasure, self-pleasure, how can it change what's going on? Well, if we are choosing self-pleasure right now, my sense is like we still have, lucky for us, until we are no longer going to have the rights to our own minds, which anyway, that's a whole other talk. But we still have, luckily, we still have some rights to our own thinking, but we're not really thinking for ourselves, and that's okay. If you still think you have the right to think for yourself, you can use things like visualization during masturbation to actually create a greater world. A world where there is sovereignty and natural law is what actually runs the world. So how do we do this? So when you're masturbating, instead of being turned on by some porn, you could be turned on by concepts. You can have your body feel elated, elevated, alive, and expanded through concepts. You can do it for money, you can do it for business, and you can do it to change the world. And I'm curious how many people would just choose to tap into that energy and see what would that be like if we actually masturbate to create a world where natural law rules. Natural law is where we're all looked after, where everybody knows. I'm just really simplifying this, where our health is looked after, our bodies are looked after, our beings are looked after. It's the most simplified version that I can give you. And so I suggest, if you're wanting to do something during this time, go for it. Go for like visualizing the kind of the world you would like to have. However, please don't limit it. I ask you not to limit it because I would like to have a world beyond what we can imagine. So I don't even know what the world would be like if we ran through everybody having total freedom and choice. What I do know is that innately, most people would not go around killing each other and looting and robbing. And most of that stuff is occurring as a rebellion against something imposed on people, laws or things where people cannot have food. Like if everybody has food and everybody has land and everybody has the right to health, or everybody is healthy because they understand that their bodies can generate health on their own because we're connected to that spiritually, we can become that energy where we can heal really fast. If we all have that, are we going to fuck with each other? Are we going to harm each other? Is there anything to fight for? Because usually people are fighting for survival, something for survival needs or land. And if we all have it and we all have food, then what's the point? There's no fight. Just the thought. So I ask you to know that there's an energy there in the world that's available that we're not really choosing yet. I think maybe we're on the verge of it. Masturbate for the world you would like to have. You can masturbate for health. You can masturbate for any of that. It's kind of all a summary of what is our God-given rights. So try that on for size and see how that goes for you. And, you know, if you are having a lover, you can include your lover's body in this creation as well, where you and your lover can be having sex and you are bringing the energy and the visualization, and that all your orgasms are going out to create like the baby that is the new creation for the planet, the new creation for what we would like the planet to be. So we can do that, people. We've still got freedom of mind, thought. We still luckily have that. We might not have freedom of speech for much longer, but we still have freedom of thought, sort of, for a little while. Use it while you can and while you have it, and definitely use it for pleasure, for the sake of pleasure, because yeah, why not? Why not use it for pleasure? This has been a highly unusual pleasure zone where I usually don't talk about my kind of tapped into some political thoughts I usually don't talk about on here. I try and keep it to sex only, but went a little far, and that's all good. I hope you guys understand where I'm coming from. Maybe it makes you like me more, maybe it makes you hate me more, and that's okay. Sometimes stuff just comes out of my mouth. I created this title and I ran with it, and that's where things are going. So we've got a few more minutes left of this wild and daring show. If you'd like to continue this strange and interesting conversation, I'd love to have you back. You're listening to The Pleasure Zone here on Inspired Choices Network, and we'll be right back after this commercial.
Are you secretly a voyeur, wondering what's going on in other people's sex lives? What if now is the time for a totally different sexual evolution? Are you interested in people who are pioneers of different sexual and pleasurable practices? Lean in now with Milica Jelenic, where she will entice you and your body to know your own pleasure zone. On the Pleasure Zone radio show with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic, you'll receive tools, inspiration, and a foundation to allow yourself to receive more in your sex life, and quite possibly other areas of your life as well. Listen for the Pleasure Zone with Milica every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific Time on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. This is the Pleasure Zone with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic. To participate in the program today, join our live studio audience in our chat room at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. You can also make the choice to ask or comment by email. info@MilicaJelenic.com. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back, my sweet, sweet pleasure seekers. My hair's gone a little bit fun today, so if you're watching on video, I keep playing with it because my curls were out of control. I kind of like did them really fast, and now they're fun and furious, fast, fun and furious curls. Woo! They'll poke your eye out if you get too close. So we've been talking about daring to have pleasure during a pandemic. I kind of went off track and on track and all over the place, but really, again, it tapped into some of the reasons why the pandemic is going on and what could really be cool if we all chose to have a different reality. So yeah, one of the things in my commercial, if you didn't notice it, it says having a different, this is a different kind of sexual revolution. Well, when I created that commercial, I had no idea what was going to be coming at this kind of time in, I had no idea that it was going to be COVID. I knew something was hitting the fan, but I could tell you I did not know it was going to be basically, biological warfare in a way. So that was not what I thought, but I know there's something else. Anyway, side note, different kind of sexual evolution and revolution would be to utilize your sexual energy to change, create change on the planet, create awareness, create more pleasure, so that it's not just for you. It does help your body, the endorphins, the dopamine, all of those things, they all help your body. That's awesome. Your body could probably use some more of it. And I'm thinking that, for some of you out there, you're like, I don't even know where to start. Well, I want you to know that you can always connect with me, because I have a lot of things that I can do with you. Well, I'm sure you know there's a lot of things I can do with you. I charge for all of them. No. So one of the things is I do some sex and intimacy coaching, which can really get you kind of back on track to, if you're not having pleasure right now and you'd like to, if there's things that you've never explored and you didn't even know that there were things you never explored, there's one thing that you can actually figure that out with. First is if you go to Inspired Choices Network and you go onto my host page, The Pleasure Zone, there is there's a leaderboard there that will direct you to do's, don'ts and maybes list that you can click on, download for free the PDF. You can kind of go through that. And then if you'd like some facilitation after that to kind of discuss how do you approach your lover, what do you do with this list, what else can you use it for? Are there other ideas than the ones that I've left for you? I left some ideas that you can reference for your do's, don'ts, and maybes list. There's a lot more ideas. So if you've got a few more in there, it's also in the show posting. So if you look on the show postings, you'll find it there as well. So go click on that. It's a free PDF download, and then you can kind of go through that, just figure that out, and then connect with me through my website. So you can find me there at milicajelenic.com, MILICAJELENIC.com. If you are going through different things with your whether it's your health or your sanity or you name it, between the coaching and some of the other healing work that I offer, we might just be able to get you through this insane time in the world and facilitate you to have more of a sense of taking your life back, as well as being able to choose into pleasure and choose into creating a future that maybe you didn't even think you were going to have. So there's all kinds of reasons you can connect with me, even if you just want to say, hey, listen to your show. Hey, I have a show idea. Love hearing all of that. Love your feedback. So please send it. I love it. It motivates me. It keeps me going. Also, if you ever would like to have like a toy party, because we're all stuck at home now, if you'd ever like to have an online Zoom sex toys party, you can connect with me. I work with the products from the company called Pure Romance. I will do demos for you. I'm not going to masturbate in front of you guys on Zoom because you'd have to pay me quite a lot to do that. But I will show you how to use toys. I will give you demos of how they work. Toys and different things like some bondage play things and different fun stuff, lubes and all kinds of joyful things. So if you'd like a toy party, let me know. I do them for North America, and also I think I can do them from Australia as well. So if that sounds fun, contact me. You can contact me through Facebook. You can contact me through my website. Let me know, hey, I'd like to have a sex toys party, and we can get hooked up. We can do one. It can be days or evenings, whatever works for you. And they're usually about 1.5 to 2 hours. You just invite your girlfriends, and we're going to have a blast talking about dildos and vibrators and lube and all the delicious things we can do to ourselves and other people, and it's fun. And so yes, I love having these parties. So by all means, connect with me. There's new products that have come out that are super fun. Super excited for a vibrator that actually has a little sucking, blowing action. It's crazy. I'm so excited to have mine arrive so I can show you guys how it works, because it's so exciting. So yeah, super fun. And so connect with me on for so many reasons, different things. Hey, you can just connect with me and I'll just send you a dare. I dare you to blah, blah, blah. My friend Christine McIver a few years ago actually did an entire dare series, which was so fun and hilarious. She dared people into greatness. I dare her to do that again, because that was really fun. And I think that it's so I think it's like a super, super fun way to get connected with people, and you get to meet new people, just daring them to do things. I dare you to go meet new people. I dare you to have pleasure no matter what. I dare you to find different ways to masturbate in your home and get away with it. That's for everybody listening. And I have an awesome guest next week, Gaia Morissette. She is a BDSM life coach, and we're going to be talking about some fundamentals of BDSM. She's super knowledgeable, so come join me for that. So stay tuned in and turned on.
Thank you for listening to The Pleasure Zone with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic. The Pleasure Zone returns next Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Mountain, and 5 p.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. We hope you'll join us. Until then, have the best week of your life by choosing to be turned on and tuned in to your body.